The 1990s, a decade of adventure, fantasy,
Human tails. Humans don't have tails. They have big, big bottoms that they wear with bad shorts.
action,
I am Captain Planet.
In the name of the moon, I'll punish you.
drama,
I gotta find Bubba!
tragedy,
Over the weekend, Abe passed away.
Abe is dead?
thrills, spills,
There's a car in the kitchen.
Harriet, there's a car in the living room!
Well, at least we know where it is.
and video games.
Little brat.
Now, get Sonic free when you buy a Sega Genesis system at its new price of $149.99.
Nintendo started the decade with the release of Super Mario Bros. 3 in North America on the Nintendo Entertainment System in February of 1990.
He's back. All you had to do was ask. Super Mario Bros. 3 from Nintendo. Now you're playing with power.
Needless to say, it became a wide phenomenon, as did the handheld Game Boy, which launched a year earlier. But by the late 80s, the competition was creeping up. The 16-bit Sega Genesis, released in Japan as the Mega Drive in 1988 and in North America in 1989, threatened Nintendo's dominance. It wouldn't be long before Nintendo started playing catch-up. Their new 16-bit Super Famicom was slated to launch in Japan in the fall of 1990. And with it would come the follow-up to Super Mario Bros. 3. Tonight, on Episode 4 of Gaming Delight's Chronicles of Mario, it's the Super Mario games of the 1990s, Part 1. Two years ago, I made a long retrospective on the Super Mario Bros. Games of the 1980s. Super Mario Bros. Versus Super Mario Bros., the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2, the Western Super Mario Bros. 2, Super Mario Bros. 3, and Super Mario Land. For this retrospective on Super Mario games of the 90s, we'll be going over them in two parts. Part 1 will cover 1990 through 1994. Our story of Super Mario World begins in Japan in 1987. Nintendo of Japan President Hiroshi Yamauchi declared that the era of their 8-bit video game console was ending. Their family computer, or Famicom, was released in 1983 and achieved insurmountable success. But by 1987, sales were slowly dropping. One major factor was the release of a whole new system. Electronics Corporation NEC released the PC Engine, an 8-bit console built on a 16-bit architecture with improved graphics over Nintendo's Famicom and Sega's Mark III/Master System. And Sega, a longtime rival of Nintendo, was busy developing their next console, the 16-bit Mega Drive. But Yamauchi also revealed that his company was developing their own 16-bit console, the Super Famicom. Nearly a year later, on August 30th, 1988, Nintendo announced the specifications of the Super Famicom, as well as the development of new games for the new system, including a new Super Mario game, Super Mario Bros. 4. It was quite the announcement, especially considering Nintendo was still 2 months away from releasing their ultimate Mario game for the Famicom, Super Mario Bros. 3. Throughout the past summer, Mario's creator, Shigeru Miyamoto, and his Research and Development 4 team, later known as Entertainment Analysis and Development, had wrapped up development of Super Mario Bros. 3. It had 10 times the size of the first game, a variety of music, new enemies, and a litany of new power-ups. Miyamoto and his team were exhausted, but their time to rest was short-lived. The powers that be at Nintendo gave the team a new assignment: to develop Super Mario Bros. 4 for the Super Famicom and have it ready in time for launch. For Nintendo, it was an obvious decision. The original Super Mario Bros. Game was a bestseller on the Famicom and its Western counterpart, the Nintendo Entertainment System. Its first sequel on the Famicom Disk System also sold well, making it the add-on's top-selling game. And Super Mario Bros. 3 was sure to sell like hotcakes. Plus, a Super Mario game was planned for Nintendo's upcoming handheld, the Game Boy. Making a Super Mario game for their 16-bit console would surely drive up hardware sales, so Nintendo EAD got to work. Over 16 staff members were brought on for the development of Super Mario Bros. 4, 9 of whom had previously worked on Super Mario Bros. 3. Among them, aside from Miyamoto, there was Toshihiko Nakago, who would direct programming for Mario 4. He had programmed out of Systems Research and Development, a development company located within Nintendo's headquarters in Kyoto. For Mario 3, he served as the programming director. Katsuya Eguchi and Hideki Kono carried their course design directions from Mario 3 over to Mario 4. Koji Kondo, who had been writing music since the first Super Mario game, returned to compose for the new game. Shigeru Miyamoto, who by that time had become Nintendo's chief software producer, was named the producer of Mario 4. He also consulted on the Super Famicom's design, as well as that for its controllers. And finally, directing the game was Takashi Tezuka, who had served as director of the Super Mario series alongside Miyamoto since the first game. Along with the Mario 3 veterans, newcomers to the Mario franchise worked on Mario 4. One was Shigefumi Hino, who was barely new to Nintendo. Previously, he had worked on a sequel to Famicom Grand Prix F1 Race. His sequel never came out, though Nintendo and HAL Laboratory did release their sequel in 1988. Now, Hino was given the task of designing character graphics for Super Mario Bros. 4. Developing for the Super Famicom would prove to be more convenient. During the Famicom era, levels would be created on graph paper by hand before programming the designs into computers. But with the new 16-bit hardware, the designers had the necessary software to let them edit levels directly on their computers. To experiment with the new hardware, Miyamoto ported Super Mario Bros. 3 to the system, but he soon realized his team wouldn't make the same game again.
We ported Mario 3 to the Super Famicom as a hardware experiment, and even though the colors and sprites were more detailed, it was still the same game. It made me realize that we couldn't just make the same game again. We had to create something new. So it was in that context that we talked about how to make the most of the new hardware. Shigeru Miyamoto.
What's more, Miyamoto and Tezuka believed that Super Mario Bros. 4 shouldn't change what made the series so great: athleticism, friendliness to newbies, and freedom. Players could run fast, jump high, avoid obstacles, and stomp on enemies, something most other games at the time weren't capable of. Anyone could pick up and play a Mario game, study it, and enjoy themselves. Plus, gamers had the right to play Super Mario Bros. However they like, such as playing without power-ups, avoiding coins, explore levels, etc. Rather than change these concepts in Mario 4, Nintendo could improve on them, add cool new elements, and show off what the Super Famicom could do. While the Super Famicom was unveiled at Nintendo's headquarters, Super Mario Bros. 4 wasn't among their early game demos. Nintendo EAD had been making constant changes to try and solidify it. For a while, Mario 4 looked similar to Mario 3 in many ways. Sprites looked identical to their counterparts in Mario 3, and the concept of the Koopalings occupying the castles carried over. The same was true with some power-ups, such as the Super Leaf, which gave Mario a raccoon suit to fly with. Plus, the world maps, though larger than Mario 3, looked very similar, perhaps even too similar. Likely no different than the Famicom games, as pointed out by co-workers. Tezuka felt the same way and organized some changes. Shigefumi Hino gave extra detail to the sprites, and Hideki Kono upgraded the maps. The team added some new elements. such as larger sprites, transparency effects on enemies and in the water, background scrolling, and rotating platforms. Since Super Mario Bros. 4 was to be a launch title, the development team implemented some more new features to make it easier than Super Mario Bros. 3. The Midway Gate was a checkpoint that made Mario big if he was small Mario. In Mario 3, players could stock up on power-ups and use some before entering the stage. In Mario 4, an item reserve box, or item stock, was added, allowing players to carry over an extra power-up from one stage to another, and by pressing select or taking a hit, the item would automatically fall out of the box for Mario to catch. With all these changes, Super Mario Bros. 4 had many elements the previous games never got. Nintendo EAD even gave the game a whole new title, Super Mario World. However, on July 28, 1989, Nintendo announced at a press conference at their first Shoshinkai trade show that the Super Famicom's release would be delayed for a whole year. Why? Well, even though the system itself was ready, there wasn't enough software. A chip shortage in the late 80s also played a part in the delay. It threatened to raise the price point of the Super Famicom by at least 50%. Plus, Nintendo's latest device, the handheld Game Boy, had only been out for 3 months, and was just days away from a North American release. In addition, the 8-bit Famicom was still thriving, thanks in large part to Super Mario Bros. 3. Plus, the fourth installment of Enix's RPG series, Dragon Quest, was so highly anticipated that Enix planned to release it on the weekend so as to prevent a repeat of the rampant truancy that occurred with the release of the third game, when over 300 students were arrested for skipping school just to buy the game. As for competition, NEC's PC Engine had been out for 2 years, and Sega's Mega Drive hadn't been out for a full year. Neither console could catch up to the Famicom. At that point, it was best not to rush the launch of the Super Famicom. Despite the delay, Nintendo revealed a new design for the system and showed a preview of Super Mario World. It was met with mixed reactions. Electronic Gaming Monthly, a US magazine known for getting early details on games and systems from Japan, stated that Super Mario World was, quote, not as graphically impressive, but did exhibit some unique twists on the original Super Mario theme. Shigeru Miyamoto and his team, however, weren't deterred. They decided to take advantage of the delay and improve on their new game even further. Among the changes, new power-ups in addition to the usuals. The Super Mushroom that made Mario Super Mario, the Fire Flower that made him shoot fireballs, and the Superstar that made him invincible. The Super Leaf from Super Mario Bros. 3, which enabled Mario to temporarily fly after a runoff, was replaced with a cape feather. Instead of raccoon ears and a tail, the feather gave Mario a cape. It still allowed him to fly and attack enemies, but if players pressed backward on the D-pad, they could allow Mario to stay airborne longer. Mario could also touch down from a high speed, attacking nearby enemies in the style of a power block. There were also roulette blocks, which, if hit, brought out a power-up that changed into a different one quickly until grabbed. Mushroom, Fire Flower, Feather, or Superstar. The P-Balloon gave Mario the ability to float to high or far-off places temporarily, or until he took a hit. The team also added features to accommodate the extra buttons and the new layout on the Super Famicom controller. Mario could now dash or shoot fireballs when players hit the new X and Y buttons, and jump on B. Mario also gained a new move with the A button, the spin jump. With this move, Mario could take out certain enemies in one stomp, bounce off certain obstacles, and, if he was big, destroy yellow bricks. The L and R shoulder buttons allowed the player to scroll the screen slightly to the left or to the right. This was a good way for players to avoid taking a blind leap of faith, which was very common in the Japanese Mario 2. Hideki Kono also made yet another change to the world map, this time even greater than the previous builds. It had 7 interconnecting worlds. Altogether, this whole new world was known as Dinosaur Land. Players were allowed to backtrack and play previous stages again. Some stages also featured secret exits, which unlocked hidden paths to new stages. Most of these certain stages were noted by when they flashed red, though some ghost houses didn't. visual clues on the map, such as warp pipes, a gap between two cliffs, or even a fortress, may indicate secret stages nearby. Some secret paths could even lead to Bowser's castle sooner than expected. Secret exits included a secret pipe leading to an alternative exit, or a key to unlock a new pathway. All told, there were 96 exits in the game's 74 stages. What's more, for the first time in the Mario series, the cartridge had a save battery, so players could take their time to find every exit, the true goal of Super Mario World. Other new items appeared too. The Dragon Coins earned extra points. Most stages had at least 5, while some don't have any. Finding 5 awarded an extra life. The green bonus blocks with the white star gave Mario an extra 1-up mushroom if he obtained at least 30 coins in the stage earlier, or a single coin otherwise. There were also flying question blocks, message blocks, triangular blocks, which let Mario climb up walls or pipes, and even dotted line blocks, among other things. The dotted line blocks were Toshihiko Nakago's way of allowing players to adjust the game's difficulty as they played, rather than just adjust it prior to playing. Hidden in 4 areas of the map were 4 different colored switch palaces: yellow, green, red, and blue. If a player reached a goal by stomping on the exclamation mark switch, the corresponding blocks solidified, making the stages easier. Exclamation blocks served as platforms, but the yellow and green blocks also contained mushrooms and feathers, respectively. Players could disregard the switch palaces if they wanted a challenge. At the end of the normal stages were large versions of the midway gates, known as giant gates, with tape between the 2 posts sliding up and down. If touched, Mario received bonus stars depending on how high it was, anywhere from 1 to 30, then 40, and the maximum 50, which also granted 3 extra lives. If the goal was passed without touching the tape, it turned into a coin and no bonus stars were awarded. Enemies and items on screen at the time the goal was reached turned into coins or power-ups. If 5 enemies were beaten this way, extra lives were also awarded. Once 100 bonus stars were accumulated, players could play a bonus game to earn extra lives, up to 8. Shigefumi Hino gave Mario's sprite a new makeover, adding white to his eyes when he was big, though his smaller sprite was left with tiny black eyes. Even a few small details were added, such as Mario flashing a peace sign when he cleared a stage, or a look of horror on his face if he lost a life by taking a hit. Hino also gave enemies from the previous games new looks, particularly the Koopa Troopas. Not only did the green and red Koopas carry over, but so did yellow and blue ones. Rather than simply slowly moving on the ground like turtles, they now walked upright, and if Mario stomped on them, instead of confining themselves to their shells, Mario could bounce them out, exposing them as vulnerable, scantily clad reptiles trying to get their shells back. Blue Koopas even tried to kick their shells at Mario. New enemies included Monty Moles, who popped out of holes in the ground or walls to attack Mario, as well as their giant counterparts, Mega Moles. Charge and Chuck, a Koopa in a football uniform that took multiple hits to take out. There were multiple variants. Rip Van Fish, a sleeping fish who would wake up and chase Mario once he passed them by. Bonsai Bill, a giant bullet bill. Torpedo Ted, torpedo-like bullet bills that only attacked underwater and were only encountered in Soda Lake. The boos of the ghost houses were renamed Boo Buddies, and accompanying them were Fish and Boos, as well as the massive Big Boo. Wiggler, an easygoing yellow caterpillar who turned into a volatile red caterpillar when hit. And because the game took place in Dinosaur Land, dinosaur-like enemies were added. Rex, dinosaur-like dragons who took 2 normal stomps to take out. Dino Rhino, half rhinoceros, half ceratopsian. If he was stomped on, he turned into a fire-breathing dino torch. Muncher, better known as Blarg, a lazy-eyed dinosaur lurking in lava. Eries, ghostly dinosaurs who haunted many a ghost house alongside the Boos. Buibui, or Reznor, a fire-breathing triceratops. 4 guarded the fortresses and attacked Mario from rotating wooden planks. But dinosaurs weren't just limited to enemies. In fact, one would actually bring Mario to new heights. This idea actually started out as a sketch that Shigeru Miyamoto had taped to his desk since the development of the original Super Mario Bros. Miyamoto's team tried to add this idea to Super Mario Bros. 3, but the Famicom's limitations wouldn't let them. Thankfully, there was the Super Famicom. Tezuka noticed Miyamoto's sketch and took the idea to Shigefumi Hino. Hino designed the new dinosaur character to nearly resemble a large reptile. However, Tezuka felt the design was out of place, so he made some modifications. The final design was a green dinosaur with a shell for a saddle. The character was given the name Yoshi, after the nickname of staff member Mie Yoshimura. In addition to riding Yoshi like a horse, Yoshi could stomp on or swallow enemies, grab items out of reach with his tongue, help Mario jump higher, walk through terrain dangerous to Mario, and utilize powers of his own. He could breathe fire, stomp on the ground, or fly, depending on the Koopa shell he ate. He could eat berries to earn coins, power-ups, and in the case of the rare green berries, extra time. Yoshi also provided Mario with extra defense. If a player took a hit while riding Yoshi, Yoshi would run away, but the player had a chance to retrieve him. There were also baby Yoshis in numerous other colors located in Star Road. Once Mario fed these babies enough enemies, they grow into a Yoshi that could perform the traits of the Koopa shell the green Yoshi ate, this time regardless of the color of the shell. With new secret exits came Star Road. Hidden in 5 areas, these roads led to Star World, with 5 different stages, each with a baby Yoshi and 2 exits. Except for the 5th stage, crossing the giant gate sent the player back to the preceding Star Road. Players had to find a secret exit to open the path to the next road. Finding the secret exit in the 5th stage opened a 6th Star Road in the center of Star World, leading to the Special Zone, an area with 8 challenging stages. Clearing them all would unlock the 7th and final Star Road, sending Mario back to Yoshi's Island, where the season has been changed from a beautiful green spring to a brownish-red autumn. In addition to a different colored world map, enemies were changed. Koopa Troopas became masked Koopas. Piranha plants became pumpkin plants. Bullet bills became pidgeot bills. Pretty soon, the game was finally starting to come together. And to help provide the sound effects and music to complete it was composer Koji Kondo. Kondo recalled how challenging it was to compose music for Super Mario Bros. 3. He'd composed a ton of melodies for the game with plenty of percussion. This proved to be taxing for him, so rather than come up with multiple melodies for Super Mario World stages, Kondo focused on a single melody incorporated into multiple tunes. But because he had to construct the sound samples himself and study new software tools, his task was 100 times more challenging on the Super Famicom than on the original Famicom. But while learning these new tools, he soon realized he could do a lot more with the music than ever before. Compared to the Famicom's 5 electronic sound channels, the Super Famicom had 8, and it supported sound effects and samples from many an instrument. With this, Kondo used an array of instruments to compose the music and sound effects for Super Mario World, resulting in a soundtrack never before heard in any Super Mario game. Kondo's melody had different varieties depending on the stage. Kondo even tacked on a percussion track to the music whenever Mario found Yoshi. He also added a reverb effect to the sound effects while Mario was underground. And with the extra memory in the Super Famicom, Kondo succeeded in what was never done in the Super Mario series before, an original title theme. Altogether, Takashi Tezuka and his team managed to weave the whole game into a single 4-megabit Super Famicom cartridge. With all the new graphics and sound coming out of the 16-bit hardware, it was totally awe-inspiring. Super Mario Bros. 4 was also added as a subtitle to the cover of the game so as to remind gamers that this was the 4th game in the Super Mario series. What's more, the game had the colors of the Super Famicom controller's face buttons: red, yellow, green, and blue, all found throughout, inside and out. The title itself, the box art, the Koopa shells, Switch palaces, and Yoshis. Once development was completed, there was still the matter of the Super Famicom being released. Thankfully, in June of 1990, Nintendo had finally announced its release date, November 21st, 1990. 2 months later, at their Shoshinkai trade show in Tokyo, the finalized Super Famicom was presented, along with Super Mario World and a second launch title, F-Zero, a massive racing game that showcased the Super Famicom's Mode 7 technology. Attendees packed Nintendo's booth throughout the whole show, mostly for Super Mario World. Nintendo received over 1.5 million pre-orders from Japanese wholesalers. That was enough for them to worry about launch day being a bit topsy-turvy, so they advised retailers to play it safe by implementing reservations when selling the new console. Some that did got so many, they would stop accepting orders, and others would hold lotteries. The Super Famicom would sell for around 25,000 yen, and come packaged with 2 controllers. Power adapters or cables were sold separately. Very early in the morning, on November 20th, 1990, Nintendo began loading their first shipment of Super Famicom consoles and the launch titles into over 100 trucks to be delivered to stores overnight in hopes of warding off thievery. The event was known as Operation Midnight Shipping. The very next morning, on November 21st, the Super Famicom, Super Mario World, and F-Zero were finally available to consumers in Japan. Some stores sold the system to customers who came in first. One issued reservation tickets over a month in advance. A major problem with launch day, however, was a stock shortage. Nintendo was only able to fulfill 300,000 of their 1.5 million pre-orders. Some stores took advantage and sold the system with a game for around 32,000 yen. Others didn't receive any systems. Some had to settle for a more expensive alternative, the Sharp SF-1, a full-color CRT television with a built-in Super Famicom. Despite all this, Nintendo managed to sell all 300,000 of those consoles within 3 days, and it was all thanks in large part to Super Mario World. The game received a wealth of praise from the press.
I thought there was no way that Mario 3 on the NES could be topped for sheer playability, but then along comes Mario 4 and blows it away. Super Mario World is a brilliant example of what the Super Famicom is capable of. The gameplay is just so addictive, you better be prepared to stay stuck to your screens until you've completed it. Overall, a totally fantastic game. What more could I say? Rob Swan, Computer and Video Games.
By February of 1991, over 750,000 copies of Super Mario World were sold, even though Nintendo had only sold over 600,000 Super Famicom units. Believe it or not, some gamers bought the game even without owning a Super Famicom. Thanks to the game's success, there were cross-promotions, manga, an interactive anime compatible with Bandai's Terabiko phone, and a plethora of merchandising, including an album with jazz arrangements of the Super Mario World soundtrack. But even though Nintendo managed to make their new console and Super Mario World a hit in Japan, how would the rest of the world react? Gaming Delight's Chronicles of Mario will return in a moment.
Suddenly, the sky is a little clearer. The water is a little bluer. The road's a little bumpier. The jumps are harder. The level's deeper. The character's smarter. The sound is hotter. The graphics cooler. The secret's darker. The danger's fiercer. The challenge a whole lot tougher. And suddenly, the world's a more exciting place to be. Super Mario World. It comes only as part of the system you are created for. The Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The next generation from Nintendo. Now you're playing with power. Super power.
While Nintendo launched the Super Famicom in Japan, their success in North America carried on. It had been over a year since launching their handheld Game Boy, which was selling like hotcakes. And by the end of 1990, 5 million units had been sold in North America alone. As for the Nintendo Entertainment System, it hadn't been a full year since Super Mario Bros. 3 hit Western store shelves, and already, over 8 million copies have been sold, and the game grossed over $500 million. And Nintendo's magazine, Nintendo Power, had 2 million subscribers. However, the competition was growing. In the summer of 1989, Sega and NEC brought their 16-bit consoles over to North America, the Sega Genesis and NEC's TurboGrafx-16. Neither managed to make waves in 1989, but in 1990, the Genesis sold over 1 million units, twice what they sold the previous year, and had expected to sell more in the coming year. So gamers wondered, when would Nintendo ride the 16-bit bandwagon? Throughout 1989 and 1990, magazines, particularly Electronic Gaming Monthly, covered the Super Famicom and Super Mario World, all the way up to its launch in Japan. Nintendo Power finally teased the new system in issue 10, and published a blurb on its unveiling in issue 16 with screenshots of the new Mario game. In January of 1991, at the Winter Consumer Electronics Show, Nintendo announced that the Super Famicom would be coming stateside, with a new design and a new name, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and a price tag of $200. Though the price was on par with the other 16-bit offerings, it was twice the price of the NES and lacked backward compatibility, and the new games wouldn't play on the old hardware, all of which disappointed some consumers who had already invested a lot of money in the 8-bit system. One concerned Lawrenceville mother told the Atlanta Constitution, "How will I explain to my son that I'm not buying the new Nintendo? Easy. I say we're getting ripped off. Kids understand getting ripped off." Another mother stated, "I wouldn't buy the new one. I see it as just more stuff to buy. They always have a new gimmick and always have a new game." They weren't the only ones.
Some parents are refusing to be taken in.
I'm going to say no, and I'm going to explain to him how people market things to make you spend more money.
And consumer complaints were not limited to some unhappy parents.
Why can't you just buy the cassette?
Because it doesn't play in the regular one. You have to buy the super unit.
Who's doing that?
I was going to get it, but I don't want to spend that much money.
He has a Game Boy, and now he has the Nintendo, and now he'd have to have another unit just for that one game. It doesn't seem right.
Despite all this confusion, insiders had doubts that consumers would abandon Nintendo completely. Some gamers were so hyped about the Super Nintendo and Super Mario World that rather than wait for the North American launch, they went ahead and imported the Super Famicom from Japan. What's more, Nintendo's Super Mario had been a smash hit in North America. According to a Q rating, which measured popularity among celebrities and brands, Nintendo's Mario scored higher than Disney's Mickey Mouse. Mario wasn't just a hit in his video games, there was all sorts of merchandising. a breakfast cereal, and an animated series. In addition, a feature film was planned. Nintendo knew the best way to convince consumers to purchase a new console was a Super Mario game. The original Super Mario Bros. Launched with the Nintendo Entertainment System in North America in October of 1985, and starting with its nationwide rollout less than a year later, it was bundled with the NES control deck. Plus, when the Game Boy launched in 1989, Super Mario Land was among the launch titles. Nintendo of America decided to do the same with the Super Nintendo. In June of 1991, at the Summer CES show in Chicago, the Super Nintendo was unveiled and showcased. Attendees lined up at the Nintendo booth to try out Super Mario World and other upcoming games. The system was to be bundled with Super Mario World. However, even Sega, Nintendo's top competitor, responded to the prior announcements. They were already gearing up for the release of their speedy new game for the Genesis later that month, Sonic the Hedgehog, in an attempt to compete with Nintendo's mascot. The game was showed off at the Winter CES and was scheduled for a release in June. Press considered Sonic Sega's very own Mario. The Genesis would also be getting a price cut from $190 to $150. Those who purchased the system with Altered Beast would receive a copy of Sonic the Hedgehog for free by mail, and before long, Sonic would replace Altered Beast as the bundled game. This would become a major factor in rising sales. When Sega of America President Tom Kalinske caught wind of the Super Nintendo's announcement, he told the press, "I think they are now, obviously, playing catch-up." For the first time in North America, Nintendo was facing legit competition. The Atari 7800 and Sega Master System never stood a chance against the Nintendo Entertainment System, and the TurboGrafx 16 wasn't selling very well outside of Japan. But with the Sega Genesis library already approaching 100 games, Nintendo of America was not going to rest on their laurels. Gaming Delight's Chronicles of Mario will return in a moment.
Introducing the next generation from Nintendo, New Super Mario World, created especially for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It's a bit more exciting, a bit more challenging, a bit more graphic, a bit more colorful, a bit more realistic, a bit more levels, a bit more secret, a bit more enemies, a bit more friends, a bit more sound, a bit hotter, a bit cooler, a bit weird, a bit more revolutionary, a bit more Mario, a bit more of what you want. It's 16-bit, and it's yours only if you get New Super Nintendo. Now you're playing with power, superpower.
You couldn't get enough of it. You ate Nintendo. You drank Nintendo. You slept Nintendo. Now, Toys R Us has the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The new Nintendo system with Super Mario World. 3D graphics, 32,000 colors, 16-bit power. Toys R Us, the biggest video game store in the world. So now you can breathe Nintendo, love Nintendo, be Nintendo at Toys R Us.
There's Dad over there. I just love all the new things Kmart has here.
Oh, I can see that.
So that's the new Super Nintendo Entertainment System.
What about it?
They say it has 16-bit technology, whatever that means.
Oh, I see. What else do they say?
That it has 3D graphics and digital stereo sound, and that Super Mario World is included.
Okay. We'll get it for them.
Yes.
So, how long did he work on you?
About 2 weeks.
Although the Super Nintendo was expected to release on September 9th, 1991, some stores, notably Toys R Us, received shipments as early as August 20th, nearly 3 weeks ahead of schedule. Other stores began receiving shipments over the remainder of the week. The Super Nintendo launched with 3 games: F-Zero, Pilot Wings, and its bundled game, Super Mario World. Nintendo backed the Super NES with a promotional campaign valued at over $25 million. Critics raved over the latest Mario game. Electronic Gaming Monthly rated the game 36 out of 40, calling it the ultimate Mario adventure and a perfect subtitle. Super Mario World also graced the cover on issue 28 of Nintendo Power and would later receive a Game of the Year award from the magazine, as well as one from a German publication, Power Play. Compared to Super Mario Bros. 3, Super Mario World is massive. It'd be an understatement to say that it was mainly because of the superior hardware. It may not have as many stages, but nearly a third of them have hidden exits. And unlike in Mario 3, you can actually replay stages. Oh, and needless to say, Super Mario World is a two-player game. However, Luigi is once again a palette swap of Mario, despite the Western Super Mario Bros. 2 making him stand out from his brother. Plus, if we look back at an early build from 1989, Mario and Luigi sprites are different. What made Miyamoto's team go back to Luigi being a simple palette swap? Time constraints? Who knows? But that's my only gripe with this game. In the end, the vast amount of secrets, Yoshi providing an extra layer of protection, which can be reused if done correctly, and of course, the thrill of replaying courses, make this game my all-time favorite, not only in the Mario series, but in all of video games. I remember my first playthrough of the game back in the summer of 1992, when some of my relatives showed it to me. Since then, I decided that the Super Nintendo and Super Mario World would be on top of my next Christmas wish list. And sure enough, on Christmas of that year, there it was. The Super Nintendo superset was Super Mario World. Throughout the years, it took me a long while to beat it. I just had fun replaying levels and over time uncovering the secret exits. But for quite some time, I was too frightened by the Big Boo to even enter some of the ghost houses after the first tries, which made me skip Lemmy's Castle. But once I got past the one on Chocolate Island, which had no Big Boos, I decided to just man up and clear the ghost houses with the Big Boo. I was surprised that the secret exit in the Donut Secret House led to a boss battle with the Big Boo to unlock the path to the Star Road. It wasn't until the fall of 1996 when I finally beat Bowser for the first time, but I never discovered the path to Soda Lake until a few years later. During the late 90s, Super Mario World and the Super Nintendo took a bit of a backseat to Super Mario 64 on the Nintendo 64, but I never abandoned it completely. And by Easter of 2002, when I got a copy of the Game Boy Advance port, Super Mario World returned to the front seat, where it remains to this very day. Even 35 years after its debut in Japan, Super Mario World continues to rank high in top video games lists. In 2016, in its 150th issue, the popular British publication Retro Gamer magazine ranked Super Mario World as number 1 out of 150. 8 years later, in issue 257, it was ranked number 10 in the issue's top 100 video games list. Super Mario World's popularity ultimately led to many a piece of merchandising, as well as its own animated series on NBC to accompany the final season of Captain N the Game Master. To this day, it would be Mario's last foray into television. The show itself, namely the series finale Mama Luigi, went on to become a major target of internet memes.
Mama? Mama Luigi? That's Mama Luigi to you, Mario!
Overall, Super Mario World went on to sell over 20 million copies worldwide, making it the best-selling game on the Super Nintendo and the entire 16-bit generation. It helped Nintendo to come out on top of the 16-bit console wars, despite Sega pushing the Genesis hard with Sonic. Now, if you can believe it, we're not through yet, even though Super Mario World took up more than half of this episode. While North American gamers relished in Super Mario World, Nintendo's R&D1 team began working on an educational program for the Super NES, as well as a sequel to Super Mario Land on the Game Boy. Gaming Delight's Chronicles of Mario will return in a moment.
Obey me, Wario. I am your master. Mario is your enemy.
The wicked imposter Wario has cast an evil spell over Mario Land.
Don't let Mario get the 6 golden coins. Don't let Mario reach the palace.
This is the biggest, most dangerous, most challenging Game Boy adventure yet.
Obey Wario. Destroy Mario.
Don't fall under Wario's evil spell in Super Mario Land 2, only on Game Boy.
Now what has she done?
She put the cat in the fishbowl and planted corn on her brother's head.
Great.
Then she cut a huge hole in the roof for the butterflies.
Terrific.
That's not all. She tore your stereo apart to add some more woofers and tweeters. I don't know where that child gets her imagination.
Me neither. But I really like what she does with it.
Mario Paint, the power to create, only on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System.
As you know, when the Game Boy launched in 1989, Super Mario Land came along with it. It went on to sell over 18 million copies. It was enough for Nintendo to work on a sequel. But as with the first one, Nintendo's Entertainment Analysis and Development Division had no involvement. Once again, they were working on new titles, including a new racing title for the Super Nintendo starring Mario, as well as Wave Race for the Game Boy. In November of 1991, R&D1 began working on the Super Mario Land sequel, but the game's designer and director, Hiroshi Kiyotake, decided the team could do better than what they did for the first game.
With Super Mario Land 2, one of our ideas was to not be bound by the conventions of the previous games. However, when we showed our first draft to everyone, they were like, I don't know, is this Mario? We realized we were on the wrong path, so we toned down that idea and made something a little closer to the existing Mario world. Hiroshi Kiyotake.
In addition to Kiyotake, newcomer Takehiko Hosokawa assisted in designing and directing. Kasumi Totaka became the game's composer. Totaka would also provide music for a new art program for the Super NES, also handled by R&D1, along with Intelligent Systems. However, for Super Mario Land 2, R&D1 still felt like giving Mario a whole new objective. Rather than save a kidnapped princess, he would fight for something of his own land, Mario Land. The island consisted of 6 primary zones, with a castle in the center of the island. How did he get his own castle? Maybe after rescuing Princess Peach multiple times, she gave him his own land, including a castle. Maybe. For the main antagonist, R&D1 came up with an evil counterpart for Mario who would stand for everything Mario would never stand for. The Bluto to Mario's Popeye, as Kiyotake said. They gave this villain the name Wario, a play on the Japanese term for bad, warui, and flipping the M in Mario's name upside down. Hosokawa helped to make Super Mario Land 2 a lot more like a Mario game than the first. It would be the first game to showcase his incredible designs. The overworld map makes it feel more like Super Mario World. The difficulty of each zone was made equal, allowing players to go through them in any order they wished. They were now also allowed to backtrack in a stage, replay a stage, and save their progress every time they beat a stage. In the game, Mario finds that his land has been dominated. His jealous acquaintance, Wario, had taken advantage of Mario's absence and had taken over Mario Land. Hidden at the end of each of the 6 zones is a golden coin, all of which are required to enter the castle. You start out in a one-time only tutorial stage known as the Mushroom Zone, to learn all the bells and whistles of the game. Once that's done, you can decide on which zone to begin your journey with. Each zone has a boss guarding one of the 6 golden coins. Throughout the game, Mario utilizes the following power-ups. There's the usual Super Mushroom to make him bigger, and the Fire Flower is back, but to get around the Game Boy's lack of color, Mario grows a feather from his hat to show that he can shoot fireballs. The carrot gives him bunny ears that make him fly, and of course the Super Star grants him temporary invincibility. Not only can the star be found in blocks, but one can also be obtained by defeating 100 enemies. As for coins, instead of resetting to 0 after collecting 100, the maximum coin capacity is 999, and you can spend them in bonus games to pick up more coins, power-ups, or extra lives. And like in the first game, reaching the upper area of the goal lets you play a bonus game. Plus you still gain extra lives from hearts. But this time, there are also the coveted hearts that grant 3 lives. In Tree Zone, you must traverse a tree while taking on numerous insects, and meeting you at the end is a massive bird known as the Big Bird. And no, I'm not talking about the Sesame Street character. Turtle Zone. Inside a monumental turtle, you take on the game's underwater stages, battling enemies such as sharks who wear boxing gloves, aqua goombas, and even the spiky round Udibo, who almost closely resemble the Gordo from the Kirby franchise, and the sea urchins from the Legend of Zelda series. The final stage here is the Whale Course, where you travel inside of a whale while avoiding their sharp ribs. The boss of this stage is an octopus and his small offspring. In Macro Zone, Mario shrinks down and battles ants and mice to make his way to the boss, the sharp-nosed sewer rat. This boss actually climbs on walls and attacks Mario from the top of the ceiling, similar to Morton and Roy in Super Mario World. Pumpkin Zone features ghost-like enemies, as well as the boos. One enemy group in particular is the masked ghoul, who wear hockey masks with daggers stuck in them. Their masks resemble Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th series. Heck, in Japan, the enemies were known as Jay's son. Guess Nintendo of America changed it to avoid any legal issues. The boss here is a witch, who shoots fire projectiles from her wand. Mario Zone takes place in a giant mechanical statue of Mario. One of the stages is made from NMB blocks, a series of building blocks made by Nintendo to compete with Legos back in the 1960s. Gunpei Yokoi, the producer of Super Mario Land 2, actually had a hand in making the toys. The boss of Mario Zone, the three little pigs, the rolling burro, the pouncing Bucho, and the higher jumping Bupon. Space Zone requires you to beat a level to gain access. In this zone, there's no gravity, letting Mario float every time he jumps. The zone's boss happens to be Tatanga, the main boss of the first game. You think maybe Wario sent Tatanga to attack Sarasa Land in the first game as a way to keep Mario at bay while he took over Mario Land? After retrieving all 6 coins, Mario enters the castle to battle Wario. There's a litany of obstacles to get through, so it's quite the challenge. At the end of the line, Wario awaits. He stomps on the ground, causing crystal balls to fall from the ceiling toward Mario. After taking 3 hits, he utilizes the carrot power-up and becomes Bunny Wario, flying across the screen before slamming to the ground. Again, 3 hits will force him to change power-ups. This time he uses a fire flower to become Fire Wario, and he leaps and shoots fireballs upon landing. Once he's hit 3 times, he shrinks down and runs away, relinquishing ownership of the castle and the whole land back to Mario. On October 21st, 1992, Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins was released for the Game Boy in Japan. A month later, it reached North America and the United Kingdom, with a European release following 2 months afterwards. Like its predecessor, it gained positive recognition from critics. GamePro gave it an average score of 4.5 out of 5, including a perfect score in the fun factor. They called it the most fun found on the Game Boy in a long time. Although it didn't make the cover of any Nintendo Power issue, a full strategy guide was featured in issue 43. Personally, although I still prefer the first game, Super Mario Land 2 is on my top 10 list of favorite Game Boy games. More variety, replayable stages, Mario looking a lot more like Mario, and of course, the debut of Wario. The castle stage, of course, was the most challenging for me, but only until you get to Wario. Another interesting tidbit I'd like to point out is Kasumi Totaka's music. To say his stage music is really catchy would be quite the understatement, but there's also a bit of a hidden song you can hear on the Game Over screen after waiting for 2.5 minutes. You can hear it on about every video game he's ever worked on, though Super Mario Land 2 wasn't the first game to feature the song. More on that shortly. In the end, Super Mario Land 2 went on to sell over 11 million copies worldwide, making it the 5th best-selling Game Boy game, just behind the first game, the Pokemon games, and Tetris. But while Super Mario Land 2 was gearing up for release, 2 more Mario games made their way to the Super Nintendo. One of these games was an edutainment title known as Mario Paint. It was designed by Hirofumi Matsuoka of R&D 1, who had previously worked on Super Mario Land and Metroid. To help ease the lives of users creating decent artwork, Game Boy co-creator Satoru Okada came up with a mouse. And to help drive sales, they added Mario to the game. Mario Paint was released on July 14, 1992 in Japan and August 1, 1992 in North America. Europe would get a release 4 months later. It's basically an art program similar to what you get on a PC at the time, but it offered so much more. Among other cool features, the text also included Japanese characters. There were 9 different eraser animations. To undo mistakes, one would click on a friendly little dog. There was a coloring book section where players would color in pre-drawn art, including art from Super Mario World. Players can even add preloaded stamps, including Super Mario World characters, or make their own. Mario Paint also provided an animation tool for players to create their own cartoons. But this art program was about more than just making your own artwork. You can play around with the title screen by clicking on one of the letters. For instance, click on the O and the title explodes. Afterwards, you'll hear yes, Mario Paint marked the debut of Totaka's song. Kasumi Totaka worked on this game too. And speaking of music, Mario Paint included a music editor for players to compose their own tunes. What's more, all these elements could be melded together into a single project of almost any sort. But among the few drawbacks, only one creation could be saved per cartridge. That's why Nintendo encouraged users to hook up their Super NES consoles to their VCRs and record their Mario Paint creations from memory. And last but not least, Mario Paint also had a minigame where one would swat flies. It was called Gnat Attack. If one needed a break from artwork, they could click the coffee cup in the bottom right corner and play the game. It was also a fun way to teach children how to use a mouse, be it on a computer or a game console. Overall, Mario Paint was a hit with critics and in sales. In 1992, it received a Parents' Choice Award, and was even used in some art classrooms. The game sold over 2 million copies. With its success, Nintendo decided to push edutainment further. Late in 1992, they released Mario Teaches Typing, a typing program for personal computers. They also licensed Mario to Software Toolworks to release Mario-themed edutainment games for PCs and the Super NES. Not only that, but developers also released games that would utilize the Super NES mouse, including a 1993 Japan-exclusive puzzle game from Game Freak known as Mario and Wario. But it wasn't just Super Mario Land 2 and Mario Paint making a big splash for Nintendo in 1992. Nintendo's Entertainment Analysis and Development Division cashed in with their own big seller, Super Mario Kart. Released on August 27, 1992 in Japan, and only 4 days later in North America, Super Mario Kart actually started out as a simple prototype under the direction of Tadashi Sugiyama, who had finished work on Pilot Wings, and Hideki Kono. It was a way of utilizing the Super Nintendo's Mode 7 graphics, similar to F-Zero, but for 2 players, and with go-karts. Seeing all the prototype racers too identical, the EAD team eventually decided to replace them with 8 characters from the Super Mario franchise. This was a surefire way to boost sales of the game and the system. In terms of stats, the racers were balanced out and drifting and items were also added to the game. Among the items, the green shells, which were fired ahead or behind to create an obstacle, the homing red shells, targeting the nearest racer ahead, the banana peels, which spun out racers, the speed-boosting mushrooms, coins to increase the kart's maximum speed, but were penalized if the player took a hit, was spun out, or fell off the track, the feather that let racers leap to take a shortcut, a superstar that granted temporary invincibility and speed increase, and the dreaded lightning bolt that shrunk down opposing racers, rendering them slower and vulnerable. Computer racers also had their own items, based on the racer's personality. In Grand Prix, players competed against computers and each other for a trophy. Time trial was essential to any racing game. Lastly, the battle mode allowed players to attack other racers to pop their balloons. The music and sounds in the game were composed by Soyo Oka, who previously worked as a sound composer on Ice Hockey, Famicom Grand Prix 2 3D Hot Rally, versus Excite Bike, and Pilot Wings. Some of her tracks in Super Mario Kart were classics. Super Mario Kart went on to become the best-selling game on the Super Famicom in Japan. It sold close to 4 million copies there. It also proved to be successful elsewhere, especially in North America. Nintendo of America had just lowered the price of the Super Nintendo Superset to $150 and offered a standalone unit, the control set, with only a single controller for $100. And Super Mario Kart, along with Mario Paint, was part of a new wave of Super NES titles to hit store shelves. With minimal text, localization was swift, though there were a few minor changes to comply with Nintendo of America's guidelines at the time, such as Princess Peach and Bowser drinking champagne in the trophy ceremony. In the Western versions, they don't. They just celebrate with their bottles. At any rate, Super Mario Kart was a critical hit. Electronic Gaming Monthly scored it 34 out of 40 and gave it an Editor's Choice Award. Nintendo had backed Super Mario Kart with a $30 million ad campaign. The game even made the cover of issue 41 of Nintendo Power. By the next year, the game was on store shelves in Europe, where its success continued. Nintendo even bundled the game with the Super NES in various regions. Super Mario Kart ultimately sold over 8.7 million copies worldwide, making it the 4th best-selling game on the Super Nintendo. But 1992 wasn't just a big year for Nintendo. Sega's epic battle would continue and escalate even further. The Mega CD add-on, released in Japan a year earlier, made its way to North America as the Sega CD, and more importantly, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was coming out for the Genesis. Sonic 2 was released in North America on Tuesday, November 24, 1992, dubbed Sonic Tuesday. Within its first week, over 400,000 copies were sold in the US alone, and Sega would continue to dominate the 16-bit gaming market in North America going into 1993. Nintendo had to step up their game. Their next new Mario installment wouldn't be ready yet, but they came up with the idea of bringing the fun of their flagship 8-bit titles to their 16-bit system in the form of a single compilation. The Super Mario Bros. Remake compilation actually began as an experiment before the development of Super Mario World began. As stated earlier, Shigeru Miyamoto and his team had ported Super Mario Bros. 3 to the Super Famicom. A few years after Super Mario World was released, the team decided to take this idea and give all the other 8-bit Mario games the same treatment, but with major improvements. The compilation consisted of Super Mario Bros., the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2, Super Mario Bros. 3, and the Western Super Mario Bros. 2, known in Japan as Super Mario USA. It had many an improvement. Aside from the obvious graphical facelifts, each game also gained a save feature with 4 slots, unlimited continues out of the box, and, thanks in part to Soyo Oka, not only 16-bit versions of the game's soundtrack, but new tunes as well. On July 14th, Super Mario Collection was released for the Super Famicom in Japan. It received critical acclaim and sold like hotcakes. It would go on to sell over 2 million copies in Japan. And it only took a month for the game to see a Western release. It hit North American store shelves on August 11, 1993, under the name Super Mario All-Stars. PAL regions got the game 4 months later. Critics praised it a great deal. Computer and Video Games magazine considered it the Super Mario Director's Cut, and GamePro gave it a perfect 5 out of 5 score. What made the compilation totally stand out in the West is that it included a never-before-released Mario game, Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2 that never saw a Western release on the NES. Super Mario All-Stars was so successful that by the end of 1993, Nintendo of America offered it for only $3.50 in postage to those who recently bought a Super Nintendo Superset. Super Mario All-Stars would eventually get bundled with the Super NES in many regions. It even got an upgrade in 1994 that never hit Japan, this time including Super Mario World, with an updated Luigi sprite. In North America, it was exclusively bundled with the Super Nintendo Mario set, while PAL regions also got a standalone release of the upgraded cartridge. Overall, Super Mario All-Stars sold over 10 million copies worldwide, making it the second best-selling Super Nintendo game of all time. Super Mario All-Stars is undoubtedly the very reason I got into the original 8-bit platformers, even though Lost Levels was still a major challenge. Without the one-up trick, it still is today. I understand this overview of Super Mario All-Stars is quite condensed, but that's because I actually did a full retrospective on it last year, so you can check it out by clicking on it at the end of the video. But there's still one game left before we wrap up this half of the retrospective. It's actually the third and final installment of the Super Mario Land series, but instead of playing as Mario, you're playing as his rival from the second game. Gaming Delight's Chronicles of Mario will return in a moment.
Let's go racing! It's Super Mario Kart Funny Car Madness! Only on Super NES! Turn the track into a giant mud pit! Or burn rubber on ice, wood, or asphalt! Mix it up with the big boys! See Bowser and his big foot-dropping truck! See Yoshi's go-kart really go! Mushrooms, banana peels, turtle shells! Dynamite! Check your rear view and make a neat test! Or go into battle mode and ruin his day! 2 speeds! Fast and way too fast! It's 2-player fun on the split screen! Only for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System! Now you're playing with power, super power!
夢の顔合わせマリオスターが大集合ピーチ姫が来ましたクッパ大王がキャサリンをスーパーマリオブラザーズマリオ2マリオ3スーパーマリオ USA4 つのゲームとおまけにニューゲームもついて1つのソフトにスーパーファミコンソフトスーパーマリオコレクション
Big, stylish, and now one of the best values in America. Just for a limited time, buy the Super NES Super Set and get 5 complete Mario games standard. Mario! You'll find the Super Set is like no other system. In performance, handling, and Mode 7 control, you'll get Super Mario World. And for $3.50 in postage, Super Mario All-Stars free with 4 Mario games in 1. Mario! So stop by your Nintendo dealer today. When it comes to value, don't forget Super Nintendo Super Set.
俺だよワリオだよ出るんだよその名はワリオランドゲームボーイで海賊相手に大暴れ金貨いっぱいウハウハだよ空飛び火を吐く敵か味方かワリオ様の出番だよ
ゲームボーイソフトスーパーマリオランド3ワリオランドワリオもよろしくね
Several staffers that worked on Super Mario Land 2 also worked on Super Mario Land 3, including directors and designers Hiroji Kiyotake and Takahiko Hosokawa. R&D 1 decided to give Wario, the antagonist of Super Mario Land 2, a game to himself, maintaining the anti-Mario theme. They gave it the name Wario Land, and added Super Mario Land 3 to the title, to emphasize the fact that it's still a follow-up to Super Mario Land 2 and to keep sales up. It did make sense, seeing as the first 2 games sold a total of almost 30 million copies. In the game, Wario is down on his luck after getting booted out of Mario's castle. He hears a rumor that Kitchen Island's brown sugar pirates, led by the ruthless Captain Syrup, have stolen and hidden many treasures, including a large gold statue of Princess Peach. Wario's mission? Find the treasures and the statue, and sell them for a high price to buy a castle of his own. Mario games are usually high-paced with plenty of platforming, but the new game is slower-paced. Unlike Super Mushrooms, which made Mario bigger, Wario uses garlic to enlarge himself. Wario's power-ups take the form of certain pots. The bull hat lets Wario rush like a bull to ram blocks, as well as ground pound to stun nearby enemies. The jet hat lets him temporarily fly, jump higher, and it even increases his speed. The dragon hat is like a flamethrower, shooting fire for a few seconds. The concept of the game is treasure hunting. Every time you clear a stage, the coins you've collected are tallied up. From time to time, you may have to spend coins to use checkpoints, exit the stage, and attack enemies. Lose a life, and you lose all the coins you obtained in that stage. Hidden in the game's 40 courses are 15 treasures. Get a game over, and you lose one of them, and will have to find it again. Throughout Kitchen Island are 7 worlds, all food-themed. Rice Beach has a few stages that alternate between 4 levels of water, depending on the tide. The Spike Koopa is the first boss, and is flame-resistant and immune to ground pounding. but he can still be rammed into, exposing his Achilles heel, his belly, which requires 3 hits to take him out. Mount Teapot resembles a tea kettle and has hot springs and lava-based areas. The Minotaur awaits at the end, and is vulnerable to fire and body slams. Doing either of those allows Wario to toss him into the lava pit. Sherbet Island is an ice-themed world, and, you guessed it, a penguin is the world boss. He has a spiked helmet protecting him from one jump attack. Stove Canyon is another lava-themed island, but with more fire hazards. The Devil's Head boss is immune to Wario's usual attacks, but not the rubble left from his own attacks, which Wario can throw at him. The SS Teacup is the brown sugar pirate's vessel, with courses set on the ship itself and some surrounding areas. Bobo, the giant bird, guards the ship. He sends out watches, tiny birds, to attack Wario, and will often swoop down to attack him directly. It takes 3 hits from jumps or throwing watches at him to take him out. The trees in Parsley Woods almost resemble Forest of Illusion in Super Mario World. The stage's boss is a spooky ghost, attacking Wario with his Yarikori Obake minions, which happen to be his only weakness. Syrup Castle is the pirate's base of operations. Captain Syrup herself awaits at the end of the final stage. She summons a massive genie and controls him in the final battle. Wario must toss his lamp to get it to stand upright and produce clouds so Wario can jump on them and pound the genie on the head. Once the genie takes 6 hits, he disappears, leaving an angry Captain Syrup to blow up her own castle. Its support column is left unfazed, and it turns out to be the missing Peach statue. But just as Wario is about to claim his prize, here comes Mario in a helicopter to take the statue back to the Mushroom Kingdom. Wario is left with only the lamp and unleashes the genie, who offers him one wish. Wario wishes for what he'd been hankering for since the start of the game: his own castle. The size of the castle he gets depends on the number of coins and treasures collected, from a cheap birdhouse to a planet with Wario's face on it. The best ending requires 99,999 coins and all 15 treasures. The treasures you collect can be a major factor in how much coins you'll make in the end. Wario Land Super Mario Land 3 was released for the Game Boy in the first half of 1994. The game sold over 5.1 million copies. Wario Land also made the front cover of Nintendo Power in issue 58. In its 57th issue, GamePro picked Wario Land as their best Game Boy game at the Winter Consumer Electronics Show. 2 issues later, they gave the game a score of 18.5 out of 20, stating, "There's nothing better in the video game world than a well-done side-scroller, and this is one well-done side-scroller." Sadly, even though the game would begin the Wario Land series, the Super Mario Land series would end here. There were plans to release a game similar to the Super Mario Land series on the Virtual Boy, but the failures of the system, among other things, ultimately cancelled the project. The closest the Virtual Boy ever got to that was Mario Clash, a 3D version of the original Mario Bros. Arcade game, which was originally intended to be a part of Virtual Boy Mario Land. However, that didn't stop the Virtual Boy from getting a Wario Land game, and it went on to become the most popular game on Nintendo's biggest failure. In fact, even to this day, Wario continues to get his own games on Nintendo platforms, including Wario's Woods on the NES and Super NES, and the WarioWare series. Gaming Delight's Chronicles of Mario will wrap up in a moment.
You're getting very greedy. You are me, Wario. You're very handsome. You have amazing powers. Plunder and pillage pirates' treasure. Bag a bazillion coins. Buy me a castle bigger than Mario's. Repeat after me. I'm the bad guy in Wario Land, Super Mario Land 3, where being bad is good and greed is good. Come and get it on Game Boy, greedy.
He's the epitome of evil. And he's on the prowl in the 3rd dimension. It's Wario. The diabolical one has gone 3D, where evil runs deep and danger comes out of nowhere in the most incredible adventure ever seen on Virtual Boy. It's Wario Land, a 3D game for a 3D world.
Wait till they get a load of me.
Try Wario's Woods, the new action puzzle with falling bombs to stack, critters to whack, and Wario at your back, only for Nintendo.
Well, that wraps up the first half of our 1990s Super Mario Bros. Retrospective. So far we covered Super Mario World, Super Mario Land 2, 6 Golden Coins, Mario Paint, Super Mario Kart, Super Mario All-Stars, and Wario Land, Super Mario Land 3. Altogether, these 6 games sold close to 57 million copies worldwide. But stay subscribed, folks, because coming this fall is part 2 of this retrospective, in which we'll cover 1995 to 1999 in terms of Super Mario games, including Super Mario 64, so don't miss out on episode 5 of the Chronicles of Mario. Thanks again for watching Gaming Delight. Until next time, happy gaming!